So welcome everyone. I'm Hillary Kane from the great state of Pennsylvania, and I'm one of your honorary co-chairs today. I'm joined with me by Kenneth Mejia from California. Kenneth, are you there?
Hey, Hillary. Yep, Kenneth Mejia here from sunny California. Great to be here, Hillary.
Great, good to see you. So welcome everyone. We are here to host the 2020 nominating convention. So welcome everyone. Party of I'm Hillary Kane from the great state of Pennsylvania, and I'm one of your honorary co-chairs today. I'm going to start off by giving us a brief overview of the day. So for many of you, this is your very first presidential nominating convention, and let me give a special welcome to those first timers. In the Green Party, we do things a little bit differently. Today will not be the highly scripted media spectacle that we've come to expect from the two major parties. Today is a working meeting where real grassroots democracy takes place. We will have votes on various items from our platform to our presidential candidate. The first item of business is the approval of our credentialing co-chairs report. That will be followed by the approval of our 2020 platform. Both of these items might invite challenges and discussion. And so at this point, I cannot tell you how long each of these sections will take. After the platform, we'll take a short break, followed by short speeches from several of our presidential candidates. That will be followed by the actual vote for our presidential candidate. Whether that is done in one round or successive rounds, we will eventually have a nominee. And so after the votes end, we'll get an acceptance speech by our candidate. The final order of business today will be to approve the vice presidential candidate with a formal vote of this body. And then and only then can we call it a day. You can follow the schedule yourself at gp.org/Saturday. Again, if you have any questions or a point of process, please use the Q&A function in Zoom webinar. Q&A is where you can type your questions, and our team behind the scenes will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We ask that you try to limit your questions to points of process. I'm now going to turn it over to Kenneth, who's going to talk a bit about the various ways that people are joining us in our first ever virtual convention. Kenneth?
Awesome. And just a quick introduction about me, everyone. I'm from California. I ran for Congress here as a Green Party member in 2017 and 2018, and I'm happy to be co-hosting here with Hillary and serving all of you. So like Hillary said, I'm here to tell you all, if you're watching, and how to participate. So for delegates, alternates, and registered observers, you all are using Zoom, the Zoom webinar. And when delegates or alternates have to vote, you will be using Lumio. And of course, it's lumio.org if you haven't checked in yet. And everyone else who's watching from home, from the audience, you all can watch from our Facebook live stream on YouTube and Twitter. And if you're not sure, you could also go to gp.org/live, where we'll have all the links to all our live streams. And we'll also have live captioning embedded. All right?
Great. Okay, so I guess we just want to talk a little bit about how we got chosen to be the honorary co-chairs for the day. So that was a vote that was decided by our national committee. So each Green Party across the country, there's state level chapters. Those chapters and state parties send delegates to our national party, and that's the official decision-making body of the Green Party. And so the decision of who gets to host the convention today, among other roles that are selected, was taken place over vote a couple of weeks ago by our national committee. And it is certainly a great honor and privilege for both myself and for Kenneth in order to be chosen for this role. So Kenneth, I know you got to say a little bit about yourself, and that's great. I myself am from Pennsylvania. I am the treasurer of the Green Party nationally, so I'm the one who keeps the books and handles all the money. But my story, I know, is a lot less exciting than yours, Kenneth. So I know you came to be a Green around 2016. You ran for office. You have a really great story. So why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are and how you became a member of the Green Party?
Yeah, so, just my journey on how I became a Green Party member was like many people watching here today, probably. They came from the Bernie Sanders camp. They were burners, and they were really fighting against wealth of income inequality, things that made sense, but we didn't know why it existed in the first place. And so when I saw someone like Bernie, I was like, all right, I'm going to get involved. I was a Democrat before I was a Green my entire life. And then sort of once I saw the machine, the DNC, the Democratic Party sort of screw over Bernie, I was like, I'm sick of it. I don't want to have anything with the Democratic Party at all. And luckily, there was an amazing candidate running at the time, because once Bernie was there, I didn't know what to do. I was either going to stay Democrat. But then luckily, I found out about the one and only Dr. Jill Stein. And so I ended up joining the Green Party because she was fighting for, her slogan was people, planet, and peace over profit. And that was, and everything she was fighting for was like Bernie on steroids. That's what Jill said. And that's sort of how I got involved with the Green Party. And ever since then, I haven't looked back. Proud to be a Green. I try to stay involved. We're building here locally in Los Angeles, the LA Greens. So if any of you live in LA, reach out to me. And, it's just been a pleasure. And, what keeps me staying and keeps me strong as a Green is our platform, no matter what. I could always rely back on our platform and look at the things we value, like single payer healthcare for all, canceling student debt, immigration for all, things that the Democratic Party is now stealing from us, like the Green New Deal. And I could always fall back on that and be like, the Greens started that trend. So that's sort of how I became a Green. And then I ran for office in 2016 and 2017 and 2018. And luckily, proudly, we got the highest percentage of the vote as a Green against Democrat in Green Party history, getting close to 30% of the vote against an incumbent Dem. So I'm proud to be a Green. I'll be Green my whole life, no matter what happens. So that's a little bit about me. Hillary, what about yourself?
Sure. So, that's a fabulous story. So I've actually been a Green for about 20 years, which is hard to believe. And in some ways, my story is, it's similar but different. So in the year 2000, I was also in my 20s, so that dates me a bit. And I was a Democrat, and the primary then, was Al Gore and Bill Bradley from New Jersey. And I had just graduated college, and Bill Bradley seemed exciting to me. He was talking about race, which to me was a really important issue, and nobody else was talking about it. And so I got involved. I, went up to New Hampshire with a busload of other young people, and I knocked on doors and really got my first taste of politics. And, I came back to Philadelphia, and I think our Pennsylvania has a sort of latish primary, maybe April, May. And by that point, Bradley was done, right? The decision was made. It was going to be Al Gore. And I had just, I never got into Al Gore. He was part of that whole Clinton team, the team that ended welfare as we know it and pushed through the crime bill authored by Joe Biden, and various other things that really just didn't sit well with me. And so I was looking for alternatives. And around the same time, I also was educating myself and learning more about the issues. I started learning more about, free trade versus fair trade. For those of you who might have been around in 2000, a lot of the politics was on global trade agreements, the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund. And so I went down to DC for a protest with some friends, a protest against the WTO. And I'm, looking at the speakers, and this guy gets up on stage and starts talking, and it's Ralph Nader. And I was like, hey, I've heard of that guy. He's a big deal. He's done some good things. And, he says he's running for president as a Green. And so I, was really intrigued. And I remember I came back to Philadelphia, and I joked that I had to search in Yahoo because Google didn't exist yet. And I had to look up what the Green Party was. And the first thing I read was the 10 key values. And that was it. Just like you said about the platform, I read through those 10 key values, and I was like, these are my values. This is the group that I have been waiting for. And I went to my first local meeting, and as they say, the rest is history. And so I have been, I guess I'm a Green for life too, 20 years and counting. And, having served at all levels of the party, starting at my local, working my way up to my state party, supporting candidates along the way, and now the pleasure is mine to serve the party at the national level. So, in some ways, it's funny that we kind of have in some ways similar paths, but it's also, it underscores for me how the Democratic Party, in some ways never changes, and it's the same old story year after year. So, all right. So I think we're going to turn it over to some other folks, Kenneth, and get the next item of business going. Is that right?
Yes, we are. We are going to turn it over. And like Hillary said before she made that point, is, the Democratic Party is a dead end. And it's still going to take pulling and pulling strings. And it's like joining the mafia to change from the inside. And, what have we seen? It never works. And, we've seen the task force that Bernie and Biden are on right now. They're not even passing things like Medicare for all or legalizing marijuana, things that we've been seeing, that we've been pushing for. And so, it's just a show. And, it's time, if you're figuring out whether you need to leave the party, the Democratic Party, join the Green Party. And like Hillary said, now it's time for me to introduce Jay Walker and Kristen Combs, the Credentialing Committee co-facilitators who will present the credentialing report and facilitate the approval process. So Jay Walker and Kristen, take it away.
Thanks, Kenneth. I'm Jay Walker, and I'm joined by Kristen Combs, one of our Green Party National Co-Chairs. Kristen is going to start us off with the report from the Credential Committee. If you have a point of reference, a point of process, or clarifying question, please use the question and answer function in the Zoom webinar, and our team behind the scenes will do their best to respond in a timely manner.
Special thank you to our credentials committee, which is Sandra Everett, Mike Feinstein, Wesson Gage, Jody Grage, and Mike Stewart. Thank you, guys. So here is our credentials report. I'm going to read it. It's long, so get ready. And please listen carefully, delegates, because we are going to vote to approve this after I am done presenting. The Credentials Committee was elected in September 2019. The initial deadline to submit credentials applications was May 5th, 2020. States and caucuses that submitted their application on or before May 5th, but had not elected delegates, were granted an automatic extension to submit their delegation information. In June, Proposal 1011, which was an amendment to the convention rules in response to COVID-19, was passed by the National Committee. This proposal removed the hard copy mailing requirement for credential signatures and allowed the preliminary credentialing of delegates to happen virtually. Proposal 1011 also added language providing for flexibility in the process and timelines for credential challenges. The Credentials Committee set a deadline of June 27th for challenges to delegations that had preliminarily been credentialed before June 25th. The deadline for challenges to delegations that received their preliminary credentials after June 25th was 36 hours after the approval of their delegation was posted to the Credentials Committee webpage. There were 5 delegations that were challenged. First, Colorado. On June 3rd, Harry Pimpy, Michael Howdy, and Kathy Woodward filed a challenge to the preliminary credentialing of the Green Party of Colorado delegation. They challenged the delegation on 4 points. First, they challenged that the Green Party of Colorado failed to convene the 2020 presidential nomination convention announced to be held on April 18th, 2020, in violation of Bylaw 4.1 due to a lack of quorum. Second, they challenged that the Green Party of Colorado Council exceeded its authority by selecting the delegates to the PNC from Colorado in violation of Bylaw 4.4.1, which allows all registered Greens to vote at a state convention. The third challenge is that registered Greens who voted for Dario Hunter and uncommitted were denied the opportunity to become PNC delegates. And the fourth challenge, that GP Colorado officers rejected the nomination of Harry Hempy to be uncommitted delegate and the nomination of Bob Kinsey to be a delegate for Dario Hunter. After review of the information provided and its own research, the Credentials Committee finds that the Green Party of Colorado Council was authorized to make a decision selecting delegates when state convention didn't have quorum, as per the Green Party of Colorado bylaws and guidelines, which can be found on their public website. That the Green Party of Colorado Council convened a virtual primary within the Green Party of Colorado rules, open to all registered Greens in Colorado, and released the results of those primaries publicly. That it based its delegation upon the results of that primary and released that allocation publicly. That the Green Party of Colorado conducted a delegate selection process that was announced in advance that sought to replicate a virtual basis what normally occurs at an in-state convention, and that all delegates were allocated to the position of their choice, 4 to Hawkins, 2 to Hunter, and 1 to uncommitted. That Harry Hempy and Bob Kinsey were not inappropriately excluded as potential delegates, which the challenge argued that they were. Based on these findings, the Credential Committee found by consensus against the challenge and in favor of retaining preliminary status for the Green Party of Colorado's PNC delegates. The second challenge was to the delegation of Kansas. On June 28th, Dee Taylor, Jackie Devenot, and Don Neptune Adams filed a challenge to the preliminary credentialing of the Green Party of Kansas on the grounds that the process used by the Green Party of Kansas to determine its allocation of delegates to the presidential nominating convention was not open and transparent. June 28th was after the filing deadline, but within 36 hours of the Kansas delegation receiving their preliminary credentials. The Credentials Committee decided by consensus to authorize the steering committee to rule on this challenge. 7 present members of the steering committee decided by consensus not to hear the challenge since it did not meet the criteria for challenges to the credentials as described in Presidential Convention Rules, Article 4, Section 4-8. The third challenge was to the delegation of Texas. On June 27th, Dee Taylor, Jackie Devenot, and Don Neptune Adams filed a challenge to the preliminary credentialing of the Texas Green Party on the grounds that it misapplied a voting system called proportional approval voting in their presidential primary, with the consequence that the results of the election were strongly biased in favor of a single candidate and poorly represented the evident preferences of the Texas Green Party voters. The Credentials Committee decided by consensus to authorize the steering committee to rule on this challenge. The steering committee decided by a vote of 5-2 not to hear the challenge since it did not meet the criteria for challenges to credentials as described in the Presidential Convention Rules, Article 4, Section 4-8. The fourth challenge was to the Young Eco-Socialists or Youth Caucus. On June 27th, Dee Taylor, Jackie Devenot, and Don Neptune Adams filed a challenge to the preliminary credentialing of the Young Eco-Socialists Caucus on the grounds that their delegate apportionment did not comply with the GPUS bylaws as amended by Proposal 168, which requires proportional representation to the maximum possible extent. The Credentials Committee decided by consensus to authorize the steering committee to rule on the challenge. The steering committee decided by a vote of 5-2 not to hear the challenge, since it did not meet the criteria for challenges to the credentials as described in the Presidential Convention Rules, Article 4, Section 4-8. The fifth and final challenge was to North Carolina. On July 6th, Camille McCarthy, Tracy Mann, and Andrew Conza filed a challenge to the preliminary credentialing of North Carolina Green Party delegation under 4-8.1, letter B, on the grounds that there are more delegates assigned to Howie Hawkins than should be proportionally allowed. The Credentials Committee decided by consensus to reject the challenge to North Carolina for untimely filing. Those were the 5 challenges. The Credentials Committee worked closely with states and caucuses to provide flexibility with deadlines and documentation when needed in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the committee agreed to accept delegations in the applications from states and caucuses without the requisite providing of photo identification, noting that upon a challenge of an individual and/or their voter registration or party affiliation, some form of identification may be required. The final deadline for credential documentation and submission of alternates was July 9th at noon Eastern Standard Time. 42 states, the District of Columbia, and 5 caucuses applied for credentials. All were approved by consensus. The Credentials Committee issued preliminary credentials to 358 delegates. And this concludes the credentials report. At this time, all of our delegates with preliminary credentials are going to take a vote to adopt the report as presented. The effect of adoption will be to issue credentials to the 358 delegates who are already in possession of preliminary credentials. And a majority is required to pass this vote. You all should have, delegates, received your Lumio logins this morning. So I'm going to ask you now, go ahead and go to your Lumio page. You'll see a vote that says adopt the credentials report as presented, and it's an agree-disagree vote. Agree means that you are agreeing to adopt the report as presented. Disagree says that you disagree with presenting the report as presented, that you want to reject the report. So you can go ahead.
You'll have 20 minutes to vote. I know the majority of you have used Lumio to vote in our mock elections, but we know some of you might need a little more time. While our delegates vote, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Reverend Seth Caperdale. Reverend Seth Caperdale and his co-pastor wife, Stephanie, have served the Reformed Church of Highland Park in New Jersey since 2001. In addition to traditional church ministry, Seth has created a robust network of church-based nonprofits that exist to provide affordable housing, disaster relief, and reentry support after prison, mental health services, immigrant advocacy, and support for veterans, unaccompanied minors, victims of trafficking, asylees, and refugees. Seth has also created a refugee-run cafe and a fair trade marketplace, and an organization to support those with cancer. Seth serves as president of the board of the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. In 2013, Seth published his first book, A Voice for Justice, Sermons that Prepared a Congregation to Respond to God in the Decade After 9/11. In 2017, Seth was the Green Party of New Jersey's candidate for governor. Seth and his wife have 3 daughters, Sina, Leah, and Cora.
change anything if he becomes president, that he'll keep the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, that he will keep the deadly sanctions that kill people in Iran and Venezuela and Zimbabwe and Cuba and so many other countries. But we know we can't have justice here and have injustice abroad. Greens do not see foreign policy as a frill, and so we demand that the defense budget be cut. A defense budget that takes up 60% of the federal budget ensures that the people's needs cannot be met. We want to get rid of the 1033 Defense Department program, which gives surplus equipment, military equipment, to local police departments. And we know that the Democrats, despite any complaints about us, raised $1 billion and then couldn't get more than an additional 10,000 votes in the state of Michigan. So we have to commit ourselves to step forward this year, to organize ourselves and to organize people who have no experience with the Green Party. And I challenge all of us, myself included, to make certain that we have an impact in our communities and that we introduce people to the Green Party platform. They already know about it. They know the Green New Deal, which Democrats claim to want, started with us. So here we are, and we have to be honest about what we want. Are we a real political party? We're not an affinity group. We're not a club. And we should not call ourselves a party if we're not working to elect more Greens to office and to grow our numbers. Where is this movement headed? It's an important time, but it's also dangerous. People must act with knowledge. It's easy to grasp on to the hot slogan of the moment, but people are inadvertently agitating for things which may not be as they seem. Defunding police can lead to budgetary sleight of hand, which also does nothing to change the nature of policing. We must demand community control of the police, community control of every aspect of our lives. And then we will have a real democracy in this country, but the Green Party must lead this effort. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Margaret. That was great. And like I know I am personally, I'm over the two-party cartel. I'm done with it. And the Greens are the way to go. I say, Margaret mentioned getting rid of one of them. Let's get rid of both. Let's bring in something new. It is time for something new. So delegates, you got 1 more minute to get these votes in, and we're going to announce the results.
I really liked her call to action to Greens to kind of challenge us, push us to kind of step up a little bit. You know, we've always known that the values we've been fighting for are the right values that people support. We just need to get more organized. We need to speak to people that are not already part of our party. It was just a strong challenge for people inside and outside of the Green Party to move in a better direction. So, Kristen, how long have you been in the Green Party?
So yeah, I joined in 2013. It was right after the Obama got elected that second time. I walked out of the voting booth in 2012 and was just not happy about voting for him. I was jazzed in 2008. I bought into that hope and change and then was grossly disappointed. That's not what happened. We got more of the same. And so I voted again for him in 2012 and saw Jill's name on the ballot. I didn't know about her, but I saw her name. And so when I walked out, I researched her and found out about the Green Party and took that little I side with quiz, you know. It said I'm like 99% green. And ended up going to a Green Party meeting really like the next week and was sitting next to Sherry Honkala, she had just been the vice presidential candidate, and thought that was so cool. It took me a couple more months to register, but I really just have never looked back since then. So I think that we're pretty much at our time. Let's see where we're at.
Is there going to be a timer?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, it's been 20 minutes.
Okay, great. So it looks like the results are in. 302 delegates have voted. 270 voted to adopt the credentialing report, and 32 have voted not to adopt. So based on the roll call in Lumia, we have a majority. The credentials report is approved as presented.
That is exciting. Congratulations to all our delegates. You are now officially credentialed. Those preliminary credentials are now official. So great. Congratulations, guys. We are going to toss it back over to our honorary co-chairs.
Okay. That was great. All right. So I think at this point, I'm going to allow Kenneth to say a few words and get us thinking about all of the resources that it takes to make the Green Party run. Kenneth.
Awesome. I'm trying to get my video to start right now. I can have the media team allow my video to air. All right. We're back on. All right. Cool. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Jay, for your time. And as Hillary said, I'm here to talk about some awesome fundraising because, as you know, the Green Party is a grassroots organization. We don't accept corporate money, PAC money, super PAC money, you name it. We get money from you all, whether it's $5, $10, $20, and we use that money to grow our party, to build and to improve our organization, our structure, and also to help down ballot candidates as well. So, I was a candidate for Congress for 3 times. And it's definitely difficult to run for office when you're up against the machine who has unlimited funds and money. And I'm literally here asking working people for whatever they could donate. And usually we're outspent 15 to 1, outraised 20 to 1, you name it. So if you have the opportunity and if you can, please donate because we are literally people powered. The Green Party is people powered. We want to grow. We want to get more organized. We want to have more structure. We want to hire more full-time people on staff to help build the Green Party. Because right now, a lot of the Greens here who are helping are doing it voluntarily. And a lot of campaigns and candidates who run for office do it voluntarily while working a job. Like myself, I was working 10 hours, 8 hours a day and still trying to run a full-fledged campaign. So, you can visit gp.org/donate. And then also, if you know of any local candidates running in your area, you could donate directly to them. So, as a candidate, as someone who's been through the process, the fire of running for office, it's really important to donate whatever you can, $5, $10, $20. If you could give up that $5 coffee and donate that $5 instead to the Green Party, or even become a monthly sustainer like myself, I donate $10 a month. Please do it. And Hillary, do you want to chime in more about, the CCC process and how we select candidates to support and, other donation?
Sure. Yeah. So as I said earlier, I'm the national party treasurer. So I'm, of course, the person who's cutting those checks when we support candidates. But I'm also a longtime member of the Coordinated Campaign Committee, or the CCC. And that's the committee at the national level that supports candidates and campaigns. And we do a number of things. We offer trainings. I did a couple of workshops earlier this week, one on Running for Office 101 on Thursday, and a workshop on fundraising and finance yesterday. And by the way, most of those workshops are already put up on the Green Party YouTube page, thanks to our webmaster and tech guru, David Doonan. So the CCC does candidate training. We've put together a lot of materials and resources, but the other thing that we do is once a year, we actually allocate funds to candidates. Process typically happens just after our annual national meeting. So August and September, if you're a candidate, look out for an email requesting that you fill out a brief application. The CCC reviews those applications, and then we give away some money. Of course, we can only give away that money if we have it in our bank account. So please donate, gp.org/donate, in order to make sure that we can keep the vital work of the party going, that we can support our candidates and campaigns, and that we can really, I think, take our game to the next level. On the CCC, we've produced tons of materials and hours of video training, and it's all just, at the most part, raw footage. We have lots of random documents. We really need to hire a graphic designer and a video editor to take all of that material and package it up nicely, put it into more digestible chunks so that more people can take advantage of those resources. So I think we have a wish list, 1 million, pages long, of all the things that we'd love to do as a party. But supporting candidates is certainly our bread and butter. Ballot access is another huge need that is unfortunately very, very costly. And so, please consider donating, one-time donations, being a monthly sustainer. I am also a monthly sustainer, and thank you, Kenneth, for being one too. And then, of course, if you don't want to donate online, you can mail checks. Even in the pandemic, we're still getting checks. And that's a great way to donate to the party without all of those transaction fees. So I think we're a little ahead of schedule, which is actually a great thing. But I guess, I'm not sure if we're going to start to do the platform early or if we want to keep going or have a little more interludes or speeches. But until somebody tells me, I'm just going to keep talking because I can do that. So, Kenneth, tell us a little bit more about the first time you ran for office and how that was different from maybe the second or third time. What are some of the things maybe that you learned that first time around that by the second and third time, or, you really had hit your stride? Because I know it's really hard for candidates the very first time out of the box. And that's why I always recommend that people run again and again, because, it can be rough going that first time around, but then you really, I think, learn to hit your stride and figure things out.
Yeah. So, when I ran for the first time, it was in 2016 as a Democrat, and that was a bit hard. It was the first time running for office, but I learned a lot from that campaign to carry it on to my second and third campaign for Congress. And I think when you want to start off running for office, you should really talk to your community, get a lot of local support, especially on the ground. People, I say don't listen too much to social media when it comes to running for office. Listen to the people that you're going to serve. So that's what we did. We went out, we talked to the community, we saw if there were people running that represented us, and we didn't see anyone running. And so, we got a lot of local support, and we built our team, and we knocked on a lot of doors. We did a lot of phone banking, and this was the first time. So it wasn't as much support as we had like our second and third time, but we had like 30, 40 people who were blasting us on social media. We were making phone bank calls and whatnot. We only raised a few $1,000s. But that was good. That was good exposure to see how it works, like how to register with the county registrar, how to talk with the Secretary of State and all the elected election officials. And so that paved the way towards my second and third run. And those were a lot more organized. We had an even bigger team. We had hundreds of supporters and volunteers helping us, knocking on doors and making phone calls. We raised, I don't even know, over, I think on our second run, we raised over $50,000. And then on our last run, we raised over, I think, $110,000.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot. But I think, as you try to run for the first time, you gain a lot of notes and a lot of things that you could have done better to do on your next run. And so we really we really listened to the community. We knocked on tens and thousands of doors, and we used social media to our advantage. And, don't get caught up in social media if you're a candidate running for office. Really listen to your community, because I know it could really, you could easily get distracted by arguing with people online. But, it was a great experience, starting off as a Dem running with, no support. And then as a Green, I got tons of more support. So it was definitely a lot of fun learning process over those 3 times I ran for office.
That's great. Any chance that we might see your name on the ballot again in the future?
People ask me that all the time about running for office, and that's a good question. In LA, when we ran for office, over 40,000 people voted for the Green Party and for our campaign, and that was close to 30% of the vote. And we only have 1,000. I think, or less than 2,000 Greens registered in Los Angeles. So the fact that we were able to pull over 40,000 people as Greens, that's something to take seriously. And that's a lot of people. And, I always think about running for office, but like I said, it really takes a lot out of you. It's like working another job and at the same time, us Greens, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have the luxury to just quit and run for office. And so that's why we really ask you all to support, to donate, to volunteer, because, that's one of the main reasons why I don't think I'll run for in the near future, because it's just difficult to juggle everything when you're all 100% volunteer based. But, I'm proud of what we did. And if I did decide to run, it would probably be local, maybe a city council position or whatnot, or a controller position for LA, which is just as competitive as running for Congress. And so, Los Angeles is huge. So if we could get here locally as well, that would be a huge accomplishment in itself. So not knowing when, but, it might happen.
That's great. So that's a great, segue, your call to volunteer. So I want to mention that if you go to the Green Party website at gp.org, and scroll down underneath the 4 pillars, you can see a big fat volunteer button. And so if you want to give your time and energy to the Green Party, which we would love to see, please click on that button. And our office manager, Starlene Rankin, will reach back out to you sometime next week. We have now regularly scheduled orientations and volunteer information sessions. And whether that's what you want to volunteer for the national party, or you really want to be connected to your local or state party, that is the button you can click. The other thing that I want to do is take a moment to really thank all of the people who made this event possible. And so as Kenneth said, it's a lot of volunteers, including the 2 of us. But, we have an amazing annual national meeting committee co-chaired by Tama Yeager from Virginia and Dee Taylor from Utah. They have put so many countless hours of work into making this event happen. As of course you realize, we were supposed to be in Detroit right now, and then this thing called the pandemic happened, and we had to pivot to virtual overnight. And we really figured, they figured it out. We got the technology going. We trained people, really tried to make sure that we were replicating the event to the best of our ability, that the way we would have had it in Detroit. So the annual meeting committee, and there was a lot of Detroiters and other, Michiganders who were part of that committee because they were going to be hosting it, that still stayed with it and helped put this event on. And then, of course, I have to thank, our staff, in particular, Michael O'Neill and Lynn Serpy, who are behind the scenes, making sure they're literally like the producers of this event. The producers and the directors wearing both hats simultaneously and doing a phenomenal job. So we have a small little group who are socially distant at a hotel room, I think in Brooklyn, New York right now, who are making all these things happen and doing the tech, doing, putting up the videos, making sure that it looks like as well-oiled and professional production as we possibly can. So I think with that, we are going to turn it over finally to the platform folks. And so, Kenneth, why don't you introduce them?
Yeah, definitely, and just want to mention too, if you're unsure on why are Kenneth and Hillary talking about their journeys or whatnot, we do have a schedule, and we try to be considerate of the schedule, and so there are times where we have to talk about our journey or about the Green Party and whatnot in order to fill that time so that we could go on schedule with the agenda. So just letting you all know, if you're wondering, God, they're talking about themselves awfully a lot. So now it's my honor to introduce our platform co-chairs, Bruce Hingford and Tim Willard. And as our platform co-chairs, Bruce and Tim will get 10 minutes to present the report of the platform committee and proposed platform to the convention. So, Bruce and Tim, please take it away.
Hello, can you hear me all right? Let's see, is Tim there? Tim, you need to unmute. Tim, need to unmute. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. We're here to look at the work of the National Committee this past year in approving 14 new amendments to our platform out of the 23 that were proposed. Each of these amendments was discussed for at least 3 weeks. Changes were made, suggestions from other members of the National Committee. Now we are here to approve these 14 new additions or changes to our platform. We do this every 2 years. The procedure that we have calls for submissions of the amendments over a 6-month period starting on April 1st. So April 1st of next year, the state parties, caucuses, and those committees of GPUS who are allowed to make proposals, amendment proposals, will begin submitting their amendments. So if there are things in this year's platform that you didn't quite agree with or would like to see changed, wording changed slightly, don't forget, April 1st next year, you can begin to do this. But the amendments have to come from a state party, a caucus, or a committee that is allowed to do so. There's Tim.
Yep.
So, anything you'd like to add, Tim?
Well, maybe just a little, to give you a little historical perspective. In the past, we had a 4-year election cycle with a new platform approved only at the PNC when the nominating convention, but and the entire platform would be presented and voted up or down. But 1 year, when the entire platform was voted down over just one item in it, and we had to spend the next 4 years going back to the previous platform, we decided to move to a 2-year cycle. And so that's how we got where we are now. And just generally today, we would have been discussing any challenges to amendments, but there were 2 challenges proposed, but none of them got enough signatures to bring the amendment they were concerned with to a vote. So we will just have some discussion on the platform amendments, and then you vote the whole thing up or down. If it gets voted down, then we go back to our platform of 2 years ago. But then again, if there's things you don't like in the present proposals, you can start next April to propose changes to it. So that's where we are today.
I'd also add that our platform process is quite a bit different from the major parties. The platform committee itself does not create all the platform amendments. We are one of the committees that is allowed to make some changes. And in the past, we have made proposals that would have come from other committees that really weren't quite functioning. So we adopted the proposals and sent them out. And pretty much every single one of them is adopted. But the thing is, the proposals for platform changes come from a lower level. They come from the state level, the caucuses, other committees. And that makes it a far more democratic process. The Democratic Party, Republican Party, they throw a lot of people together with probably a lot of influence and money behind them, and that's who writes the platform. You write the platform in the Green Party. You suggest things to your state party takes them up, sends them on to the national party, and then it's discussed by about 150 delegates from state parties and caucuses. And the other thing to remember is that our platform is one of the major vehicles for bringing people into the Green Party. It serves two purposes. Actually, it provides policies that our candidates can run on, but it's also a vision. It's a vision of what we would do if we could ever get into government in a major way. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about how to vote on these particular proposals and a platform in general. Platform could be improved. It's 80 pages long. It could probably be shortened a little bit. But it's a visionary set of guidelines that bring people into the party and give our candidates something to run on. So who's facilitating this? I think we've been at it for 10 minutes or so. Okay.
I think that's me. So thank you, Bruce and Tim. So as we mentioned, there were 3 delegates who met the deadline to request to address the convention. They have each been asked to keep their comments to 1 minute and said they were fine with just using their audio feed. So all 3 speakers will be addressing Chapter 4, Section M, National Debt. There was quite a bit of debate on Lumio about this, so I'm really interested to hear what they have to say. So I think our first speaker is Molly Galloway from Utah. Molly.
Hello, everyone. With this, there's several points I made about this. This is a very, for my opinion, a very controversial plank to adopt because of the fact that it focuses heavily on national debt. There's this kind of stuff would definitely cause a lot of people to have a hard time voting for the platform overall, which is why I wanted to separate it out for a yes or no vote to give people the opportunity to choose for that. Which is why I wish I could open the signatures to see if I could get the rest of those. So it was close, but the point is that it focuses heavily in the same way that a lot of conservatives, economically conservative groups have on the debt, as opposed to the context of this. The simplicity of just debt being bad by definition can massively hinder our goals as the Green Party. We have a candidate who, the main candidates who are proposing, say, UBI, for instance, or proposing a Green New Deal, and all these things would necessitate that we would take on debt in order to execute them. There are a lot of even like forgetting modern monetary theory, which people support, which only states that interest won't occur if, say, I got muted.
Did we lose Molly?
No, the host muted me.
So I think that's because, Molly, you hit the 60-second mark, and unfortunately time is up. And because we do have a tight schedule today, we do need to keep to that. Kenneth, do you want to introduce our next speaker? And remember, it is a strict 60-second timeline.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. And our second speaker is Howard Switzer from Tennessee.
Hello. The American Revolution was won militarily but lost monetarily, after which John Adams said, there are two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. That means there are two kinds of revolution. As Salvador Allende would say 200 years later, we won the revolution, but we did not win the power. He was referring to the power to issue debt-free public money to fund the general welfare. This is what greening of the dollar is about. Our nation is harnessed to debt via a privately controlled money system. And the focus of the revolution will be on the debt-based money system, because we've already won militarily. Now we need to win monetarily. The Banking and Monetary Reform Committee is dedicated to bringing this to fruition through education of the electorate. And invite you to visit our website, which was Howie Hawkins' idea, by the way, at greensformonetaryreform.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard. And our last speaker will be Eugene Wallison from Connecticut. Eugene? Do we have Eugene? All right, I'm hearing that Eugene is not here, so I guess we will keep moving on. So I'm gonna just say thank you to our two speakers, and according to our convention rules, the platform co-chairs can be given up to 10 minutes for closing remarks. Bruce and Tim, would either of you like to start?
Not sure what to say at this point. I think I probably shouldn't make any comments regarding the amendments, but I think they're all pretty good amendments anyway. They made a good addition to our platform. Most of them are pretty simple and straightforward. So I would urge the delegates to vote in favor of adding these 14 amendments to our platform. Tim, you have anything to add?
Okay.
Talk about how I got involved with the Green Party like everybody else. But we don't need to kill time. If you want to keep things moving, let's keep moving.
Let's keep things moving, and if we need to, we'll do a little Q&A with the both of you. So thank you, Bruce and Tim, for all your efforts and those of the entire platform committee. So now it's time to call the vote.
Perfect. And delegates, you can now vote in Lumio, and you will have 20 minutes to vote on whether to adopt the proposed platform. You could click the thumbs up to agree or thumbs down to disagree, and the threshold for this vote is 2/3 support. Please, delegates, go on Lumio and vote now on the proposed platform. And while our delegates are busy casting their votes, we are going to hear from some amazing speakers right now. And we're going to start off with the 4-term Minneapolis City Council member, Cam Gordon. And a little bit about Cam Gordon is, since first being elected in 2005, Cam has used the green values of social justice, ecological wisdom, grassroots democracy, and nonviolence to guide and work in city government. Among the large body of work he has done as city council member, Cam is most often recognized for the leadership and energy he has provided to issues of racial equity, civic participation, public health, environmental justice, clean energy, violence prevention, and local foods. He's a founding member and former party chair of the Green Party of Minnesota. And as the Minneapolis City Council member for Ward 2, Cam Gordon chairs the council's Housing Policy and Development Committee, vice chairs the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee, and serves on the Budget Committee of the whole Economic Development and Regulatory Services, Elections and Rules, Transportation and Public Works, and Zoning and Planning. You could also find out more about this green camgordon.org. And if you didn't know, Cam Gordon was also one of the 9 who voted to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department. So Cam Gordon, everyone.
Great. And I think one quick point of order that your vote on Lumio for the platform should be coming shortly. So keep your eye on your inbox.
Hello, I'm Cam Gordon. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I just wanted to send you a message of support and goodwill from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I've been serving on the Minneapolis City Council now for the past 14 years, representing the Green Party in our city government. And I just want you to know that getting organized at the local level, running for office, then other elected officials latch onto those. Using the value of grassroots democracy, we've been able to make ranked choice voting the way we elect our city government here in the city of Minneapolis, and that includes at-large seats for the park board that are elected proportionally. And we've done that successfully year after year and opened up our system here. Using social and economic justice to guide us, we've been able to raise the minimum wage here in the city of Minneapolis, and we've also established a racial equity action plan trying to address what are some of the worst disparities in any city in the country, in racial disparities that we have in the city of Minneapolis. It wasn't easy, but we did that work. Using nonviolence, we were able to create a division of violence prevention. We've been able to move programs forward, working through hospitals, co-responders in our police department, so that we can address the issue of violence from a public health perspective, which has been key and which has been very, very, very important. And using the value of ecological wisdom, we created a very strong climate action plan in our city. We now have a clean energy partnership with our utility companies after a failed effort to take over them. But that's still something that could be done in the future. But we also were able to develop a green zones program so that we can bring resources to the communities that need them most, who've been subjected to environmental injustice for decades in the city of Minneapolis. And we now have clean energy goals to phase out of the use of fossil fuels in our city. And people are latching onto those ideas, and they're becoming more and more popular. I also wanted to talk about one of the biggest struggles that we're in right now in Minneapolis, and I'm sure people have heard about the focal point with the police murder of George Floyd, that tragic death, and then everything in it has resulted. We have a new opportunity in our city, and we're looking at what we can do to change significantly from top to bottom and transform even the way we approach community safety, public safety, and policing in the city of Minneapolis. We're moving forward now with a charter amendment that we've tried charter amendments in the past, but to deal with this problem. But now I think we have the best hope, where we will actually remove the police department from our charter and replace it with a Department of Community Safety and Violence Prevention. We're going to work hard at developing police oversight mechanisms in the meantime, while we push that charter amendment forward onto the ballot. We passed a historic resolution, I think unanimously by the City Council, saying we're going to engage in a year-long community process where we're going to help everybody reimagine what public safety could be like, and we're going to listen to one another so we can understand, well, some people might think the system of paramilitary policing that we've had so far works for them. It doesn't work for everybody in our city, and it has resulted in tragedy time and time again in the city of Minneapolis. In order for us to do that, though, we're really going to need the help of everybody in the city, and also voices from outside the city to help guide us in this new direction. I believe that Minneapolis has an opportunity to be a model for other cities and into the future about how we can rethink, redo, recreate, and rebuild public safety, destroy the institutionalized racism that is in our criminal justice system, certainly at the city level, and we can offer a new pathway forward. But we need your ideas, everybody's ideas, and the expertise out there too. And we also need people at every city, in every state, every county, every school board, park board, organizing and building and talking about it and having this discussion and carrying our Green Party values forward into the future. We can build at the local level, and it's also important that we're building at the national level. So I really appreciate that people are able to engage at that level and work on these national campaigns, and I encourage everybody. Remember, there's also elected offices locally. Get involved. You can really make a difference, and the Green Party values and our platform can be a guide to help you get there. Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of your conference. Hello, I'm Cam Gordon. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I just wanted to send you a message of support and goodwill.
Sorry about that. So our next speech while we cast our votes is from our 2016 vice presidential candidate, Ajamu Baraka. Ajamu Baraka is the national organizer of the Black Alliance for Peace and was the 2016 candidate for vice president on the Green Party ticket. Baraka serves on the executive committee of the U.S. Peace Council and leadership body of the United National Anti-War Coalition. He is an editor and contributing columnist for the Black Agenda Report and contributing columnist for Counterpunch. He was recently awarded the U.S. Peace Memorial 2019 Peace Prize and the Serena Sherm Award for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism. Ajamu. All right, hopefully we'll get that video queued up. I had the pleasure of meeting Ajamu last year at our convention in Salem. And then he came down to Philadelphia, or up, I guess, from DC, and did an event in partnership with some local Black-led organizations, which was great. So I'm assuming we're having some technical difficulties pulling up Ajamu's video. And so remember, keep your questions, and if you have any technical issues or points of process, to put them into the Q&A box. Oh, here we go.
My name is Ajamu Baraka. I am a committed member of the Green Party and was on the ballot in 2016. This is a very, very important historical moment. And I'm honored to have an opportunity to share a few comments. Objectively, we have to understand the context in which the Green Party is operating, both international and domestic. We have a grinding economic crisis in which there are irreconcilable contradictions that we have to come to terms with. Both in the international economy and domestically. Domestically, we have a situation where people never really recovered from the downturn of the economy in 2007 and 2008. But now, as a consequence of the veritable collapse of the economy, as a consequence of COVID-19, we have a situation that for many people in the U.S., and really around the world, is dire. It's quite clear that the ruling class is more concerned with saving the economy than the lives of the people. And that's why we've seen the kinds of moves that were made by the Trump administration with the full support of the corporate class to drive people back into the economy, even when it was quite clear that the number of COVID-19 cases was on the rise. This is understandable, but it is the context now that we are dealing with. That basically people have been radicalized. They understand that they are just mere cogs in a capitalist machine, and they are looking for alternatives. There is no economic recovery. The contradictions of the current system suggest that there will be no return to normal. In fact, for many of us, normal was in fact catching hell. The objective logic of the rulers today is a increasing dependence on force and violence. That's why we see the expansion of the military budget. That's why we're experiencing intensified domestic repression, nuclear upgrading and redeployments. All of these reflect a desperate attempt on the part of the rulers to use force and violence in order to maintain their hegemony. But we're not going to be deterred. We understand and we accept these conditions as the context that the party has to be prepared to operate in. And we're going to do that and resist the opportunism that other parties engage in. We're going to adhere to our principles and boldly state the Green Party program. This provides tremendous opportunities for the Green Party. It's quite clear that the Green Party has been driving progressive discourse in this country for a number of years. Now we have an opportunity to provide the kinds of answers that people are looking for. The people recognize that there's no democracy in this country. They recognize that basically they have no real objective human rights that are being respected and promoted by the state. Therefore, they are looking for real alternatives that are grounded in a new kind of ethical framework. And that ethical framework, that political program, the Green Party really represents. But the party has to be ready. It has to be ready for the moment. It has to be prepared to look at itself critically, to make sure that it is getting itself in position to absorb the influx that the party is experiencing. It means that the party has to be, and the party activists have to be more visible on a local level. The state party structures have to open up themselves for more participation, committed to expanding the party base across the country. It means that we have to pull behind the party nominee and go out into the public and push the party's program with boldness and confidence, understanding that we're going to be the object of criticism, but that we are in fact on the right side of history. So this is the moment for the Green Party. It means that we have to prepare ourselves. We have to engage in conversations, sometimes painful struggle, to make sure that we are really positioned to take advantage of this moment and to go forward. So I salute everyone who's participating in this fantastic gathering. Let us go forward and build the kind of instrument that the historical moment demands. Let us be reminded that we are, in fact, the party that puts the people, planet, and peace over profit. And therefore, our growth opportunity is enormous. So let's build the party. Let's create a new U.S. and indeed a new world. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ajamu. And our third speaker right now during this time while delegates are voting on the platform is Mirna Martinez. Mirna Martinez is a longtime resident of the city of New London in southeastern Connecticut. And she moved to the area following years of several works working as a Spanish teacher in Boston and New York City. She holds her master's in bilingual education. And over the past 18 years in the city, Mirna has served as a teacher and as the youth program director of Fresh New London. And she is also a school board member in New London, Connecticut as well. And she also ran as a Green in the 39th House District in Connecticut. So Mirna Martinez, please take it away.
Todo esto ha sido en la ciudad de New London, que es una ciudad pequeña de bajos ingresos en el estado de Connecticut. Y les cuento acerca de la ciudad de bajos ingresos porque en parte es razón por mi meta principal, que ha sido amplificar las oportunidades para todos los estudiantes por parte de requerir sistemas en cual se ven los resultados académicos de diferentes demografías. Porque, por ejemplo, si vemos que nuestros estudiantes latinos están teniendo éxito, sabemos que estamos satisfaciendo sus necesidades. También queremos requerir que tenemos representación de demografías diversas, incluyendo estudiantes en comités y en grupos donde se hacen decisiones. Les cuento, hemos podido avanzar ciertos intentos, como la póliza de equidad y diversidad, y todavía falta bastante trabajo que realizar con otras metas. Mi propósito en hablar con ustedes hoy es simplemente continuar la plática de nuestras prioridades, posibilidades y presentarnos para que trabajemos juntos en el continuo mejoramiento de una sociedad que nos valúa y permite oportunidades a todos. Espero conocerlos en persona y que trabajemos juntos. Adelante.
Okay,
All right.
Is voting now closed? I believe it is, and we're going to try to get a visual of the vote on the screen. All right, so assuming that voting is closed, and I'm going to assume that until someone pings me and tells me that it's not, it looks to me as if the proposal did not pass. It looks like 282 people of 363 voted, and of those voting individuals, 63% agreed and 13% did not. And so as far as I can tell, it fails by the 2/3 rule, though I don't know if it's 2/3 of the vote or 2/3 of the people. So let me read the rule because it is pasted here for me. So it says, according to rule 5-8.2D, should the convention fail to adopt the proposed platform, the platform committee is instructed to retitle the existing Green Party platform as the current Green Party platform and to report it to the Green National Committee. But
Hey, Hillary.
told that my math is wrong, and so that is not
Kristen
the first
here.
time.
Hillary, can you hear me?
I can, and I'm realizing
I just want to give a clarification real quick. Since it is 2/3 of who voted, not 2/3 of the delegates.
Great.
And so since we had 288 people vote, it is 81% of that 288 who approved. So we do have approval for the platform.
Great. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I didn't have that in front of me, and then I was reading it off and I realized my math wasn't quite right. And so I think I was realizing that that actually was the case as I was going through the process for not passing. But so good. So we have a 2020 new platform. It's a living document. There will always be room for updates in the next cycle. But this is great. So I'm glad to know that we do have a new platform with 81% of the delegates who cast their vote. All right. So I think at this point, we are going to do one more speaker before our the next section of our agenda. I want to just thank Tim and Bruce from the platform committee for their hard work, and for everyone out there who voted and for participating in our platform vote. So before the next break, I'm going to introduce our next and final speaker for this section, Jenny Lyon. Jenny Lyon is a state member for the electorate of Newtown in the New South Wales Legislative Assembly. Jenny has been an active member of the Greens for over a decade. In 2013, she worked as the federal election campaign coordinator for the New South Wales Greens. And of course, this is in Australia. Jenny was elected to Parliament at the New South Wales state election on the 28th of March in 2015. Her statewide portfolio includes responsibilities for the New South Wales Greens, including human rights, sex, sexuality, and gender identity, housing and homelessness, women's rights, multiculturalism, Western Sydney, and climate change. So just a few things. Jenny is a passionate advocate for equality, justice, and human rights, and has a long track record of standing up and speaking out against racism, sexism, discrimination, and the politics of fear. She is strongly committed to ensuring we maintain the diversity and creativity of our city, or their city, by removing the privatization agenda that prevents housing, transportation, and public services from serving people and communities. Let's hear from Jenny Lyon.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been so excited by the idea that I get to see you again, because of course it's been a while since being there at your second election night victory party. Definitely one of my favorites. So I just want to jump right in today, if that's all right.
Please.
The first question is just, what is your proudest accomplishment as a two-term Green MLA in Sydney, Australia, in Newtown specifically?
Yeah, look, it's really hard, I think, for us as Greens. We come to the concept of how we want to achieve change in the world through a sense of collective action, so it always feels weird when people ask me about like my achievements, or we talk about like my election victory, because to me it's like, I know, like, you were one of the people on the campaign, like, I know that without hundreds of volunteers and people doing all of that effort, then I would not have been elected. And then all of the things that we achieve in terms of wins wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for massive amounts of community movements and campaigns before I even, was around in politics. So it feels really hard to identify a moment. But I would say that I feel like the one that is in the most sort of forefront of my mind is that last year in New South Wales, we finally managed to decriminalise abortion. And a few years before that, we managed to give an apology to the 78ers, who were the first people that marched in the Mardi Gras parade that suffered massive police brutality and violence and homophobia as a result of them trying to engage in a peaceful rally and protest down Oxford Street in Sydney at our first ever Mardi Gras back in '78. And so to me, I see those as incredible moments in our collective history around the push for equality, around LGBTIQ rights, and also around the idea of women's rights and reproductive rights. And the fact that I got to be in Parliament to be part of the apology given to those 78ers at that first Mardi Gras, and that I was in Parliament and had my name as one of the Greens members on the bill that worked to decriminalise abortion in New South Wales, feel like definitely, moments in time that I got to be a part of because of incredible Greens members being able to elect representatives to the Parliament that then meant that we were part of not just the history at the time and those movements at the time that had been pushing for it, but also being able to achieve what was really significant change to communities, LGBTIQ communities and feminist communities here in Sydney and across, the country, because those things are significant.
Great. I mean, thank you. And it actually leads almost perfectly into my next question, which is, if I remember correctly, you ended up having a child during your first term in Parliament. And I can only imagine that as a first termer and as one of the relatively few women in Parliament, that meant a lot of changes. And I just wondered, I thought sometimes people are really curious, how does someone handle juggling being a mother, being a new mother, and actually being a member of Parliament?
Yeah, look, I think it's true. I laughed and said, within 2 years, I got 2 new titles. I got MP and Mum. And they were both titles that I never would have expected I would have either of them, or really planned to have either of them. So it was a big shock. In one hand, the flexibility that I have around some parts of my work make it a lot easier for me than other women. I am in a really privileged position with my role that if I need to cancel meetings on a day, then I can cancel them and I can't get the staff. Whereas if someone's doing shift work, the risk is if you're in insecure employment and your child is sick, then you risk losing your job if you have to take the day off. So on one hand, there's a huge privilege that goes with the kind of role that I have because I have that flexibility. On the other hand, the expectations to be out and about all the time, when Parliament's sitting, you don't have that flexibility. At events and activities, that's really tough. But it's also very tough to sort of negotiate what is your very public facing life and the realities of having sort of, crusty food on your clothes while you're trying to do a news interview, or during ISO lockdown. I at one point was doing a radio interview while dancing with my daughter while she was listening to Frozen soundtrack to try and keep her distracted while I was giving my grabs. So there are definite negotiations and challenges, but I think they are challenges that all working people with young children face, particularly the pressures on women with the various, challenges around the disproportionate level of care and responsibility that women lift and the mental load that women carry. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a strong advocate for free childcare, for free early childhood education, and for making sure that, you should be able to access these high quality services to make sure the younger generation doesn't suffer because their parents choose to want to engage in meaningful and productive work.
Well, that's great. I mean, when I came back the second time, it was in the middle of campaign season, so I didn't have the opportunity to see you interact as much as I might normally, because of course campaigns are very, very hectic. But I want to ask you about something that's maybe not as positive, but is perhaps quite timely. So in your first term, I remember that there was quite a bit of racist attacks against you by the police department. Can you just share a little bit about that and also how you were able to handle it given your position?
Yeah, for sure. And I should acknowledge as well, I appreciate we're recording this, but I should acknowledge that where I'm sitting in the New South Wales Parliament today is on Gadigal land. And I would like to acknowledge that it is Gadigal land, Aboriginal land, and it was never ceded. And it is stolen land. And it's one of the struggles that is ongoing here at the moment, as I know you guys are also facing those struggles around looking at the systemic racism that exists within our society, and particularly in Australia, the injustice faced by First Nations people who have never, ever had the same equity or recognition as white people and the colonisers of this country, and that needs to be acknowledged. Sadly, the New South Wales Police Force are a power unto their own, and it was absolutely rattling to me and shocking to me to discover that New South Wales Police had been trolling my Facebook page with really racist and sexist comments as a Member of Parliament. I just assumed that there were limits to people's levels of bad behaviour and racism, and it was, personally really rattling, but also just fired me up to think, well, if they do this to me, what do they do to a young Aboriginal boy when no one's watching? Because if there is a level of arrogance that suggests that they're willing to do this kind of racist attack publicly to a member of parliament, what would they do to someone when no one's looking? And that to me demonstrates a level of real concern around the culture and the systemic racism that exists in our police force, and as we know, police forces around the world. And the fact that they are even called police forces rather than police services, the fact that simultaneously as a woman of colour and as someone who is at risk of walking down the street and potentially being assaulted or subject to a racist attack, then I'm expected to then ring the police to report that when they are the ones that have actually engaged in those attacks in the past, really undermines people's sense of security and safety. And so I use that to fuel my passion about how we need to reform the systemic racism within our justice system and our policing system. I use it to push my boundaries, and I use the rage and the anger I feel about that to push the boundaries and say, well, you know, if I'm going to be here and I'm subjected to this, then the impact it has on so many others means that I have no choice but to speak out on it and speak up on it, even if it means that I get further attacks and further criticisms. It's a very bizarre situation, but one at the moment that I feel so inspired and empowered by, because there are so many people that suffer such worse racism and discrimination than me in a lot less powerful positions. And I just take hope every day from watching those individuals and think, well, if they can do that, if they can stand up and do these things, then, you know, it's an absolute responsibility that I have to do it, and how lucky and privileged I am to be part of the movement that is actually trying to stamp out racism and discrimination once and for all.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny, for sharing your wonderful experience as a legislator in South Wales. And if you're just tuning in, and I just want to point out some clarification on the platform vote as well, that was talked about right before this, and letting you know that 289 delegates voted in this vote, and 235 agreed with the platform, and 54 disagreed. So if you were trying to figure out if we reached the 2/3 threshold, you would just divide 235 divided by 289. That is how we came up with 81%. So the platform amendments did pass for 2020. So just letting you all know, if you're tuning in late or whatnot, there were 235 agreed out of 289 people who voted. And now I just want to go on to our next point, and we're going to take a quick break. It's going to be a 15-minute break, and during that time as well, we will be restarting our Facebook live stream. So if you're tuning in, make sure you rejoin, because it will end, because Facebook does have a limit on the live stream on how long you could live stream something. And we are going to have our keynote speaker when we come back. And so you don't want to miss it. Our keynote speaker is our 2012 and 2016 presidential Green Party candidate, Dr. Jill Stein. So make sure you please come back in 15 minutes. And on my clock, that is so I'm in Pacific Standard Time. So that will come back by 2:12 p.m. Eastern. And if you're in Pacific Standard Time, it is 2:02 p.m. Eastern. And then if you're on the West Coast like me, it will be 11:02 a.m. Pacific. So please come back in 15 minutes, and we'll hear from Dr. Jill Stein as our keynote speaker. Thank you.